Thank you, everyone that has joined. We're really, really excited to get into some very relevant and important stuff today regarding digital transformation, user experience, and kind of how technology decisions affect businesses, at the user level. I'd like to start by introducing myself. I'm Andrew Ham. I run sales for Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas. And I'm very pleased to welcome one of our longtime customers from Mead Hunt, Andy Knauf. He's a CIO. They have been a Panzer customer for about 9 years. They last year, which I think we will get into, had a very compelling story where during the pandemic, they were able to adjust very quickly, have one of their most profitable and fastest growth years in the company's history, and move into the top A&R 100 companies. So Andy, I wanted to give you a quick chance to say hello, whatever you'd like to say about yourself, and then I'll jump in with some questions.
Thanks, Andrew. Yes, I've been at Mead Hunt now for 31 years, and we've seen large growth in the last couple of years. I started, we were just one office, and there was 85 people, and now we have, I think it's over 950 people, and we're pushing close to 40 offices. We're a nationwide firm. We're constantly in the one of the best places to work for in the U.S. And like Andrew said, we just broke it to the top 500 firms. So the next goal is the top 50 and top 10, and eventually, go for that top spot. But we got a little ways to go. We're just happy that we got into the top 100 this year. But last year's revenue was it's the best revenue year for us ever. We topped over $191 million in revenue. Everything's pointing up for us, and we're happy to answer some questions today.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for everyone for joining. I know it looks like more folks have rolled in. Let's jump into kind of some of the questions, and we're definitely going to get into last year and how you guys were able to pivot. I want to hear about your your thought process as a leader and some of the things that you had to think about in the midst of such chaos. But I want to kind of start philosophical with who you are and how you think about your decisions as a leader. So the first question I'd ask you is, as a technology leader, how do you kind of see your decisions, made in the technical world impacting directly the employees within your organization?
I mean, IT is really really important, today. I mean, technology is everything, and we really saw that this last year. If you didn't have the right technology in place, you didn't have the right systems out there, you just kind of took a back seat. What we do in IT, influences everybody. So if we didn't have some of the systems in place to make that transition when people went home, people would have just not been, they wouldn't have been billing, they wouldn't have been productive, and we wouldn't have had the year that we had. So it's very important. And if IT is not doing their job, just like any other corporate department in a company, it hurts the people, hurts increases in pay, bonuses, whatever. All that's impacted if you can't get the job done. So the company still has to, survive. And if you survive, you got to have the technology out there. So I think IT really played a vital role in making sure that last year went as good as it could possibly go.
So let's back up about 9 years. Whenever you made the decision to, drive the company into more of a cloud model. So what drove that decision to implement that strategy, at Mead Hunt? What were the most critical factors and kind of challenges even that you faced?
So back then at that time we had about 24 offices, and their biggest problem was collaboration with other offices. So we'd have offices of 5 or 6 people or 10 people, and everything worked good at, everybody called it the mothership, the main office. Everything worked good there. But in all the other offices, things just didn't click as good as they should have been. We used Riverbed, we used Cisco WAS, we used all these tools to sync up files, and it wasn't real time. Then we really had a big problem with file lock and sync. That was our biggest problem back then. So the first time that I saw a presentation on Panzera, I'm taking screenshots of what's happening. I'm like, if this really works, I mean, if this does the trick, I mean, this is the answer to all of our problems. I mean, it just seems too good to be true. And as soon as I got back, I got a demo of it, got a couple of units sent out, and less than 21 days after we started, we ordered all of it. At that time, we ordered 24 controllers and said, this is the answer for us. And it really fixed all those problems. I wasn't necessarily 9 years ago that interested in going to the cloud because it wasn't maybe fully formed back then, and not a lot of people were doing it. But it seemed like it made the most sense, and that was probably one of the best decisions that I ever made in my entire career, is to make that initial jump into the cloud infrastructure by moving all of our data up there. Since we did that, we haven't lost a file in the last 9 years. None. Zero. I mean, the files get backed up. People don't overwrite a file. We always know that what we're working on is the most current copy of it, and it's set it and forget it. And I think we're over 150 terabytes of data that's up there, and it's completely protected. And like I said, it's really the easy button. If you want the easy button, that definitely was it.
That's awesome. And I was going to ask this question later on, but since you kind of went into it, what would you say to a technologist or a technical leader who is, kind of toying with the idea of shifting more critical workloads into the cloud and digital transforming, but there's that big question of, well, what about our data? How is it going to be protected? What's the security? Are there misconceptions out there about the security of the cloud that what would you say to that person? What advice would you give?
Yeah, I think there still is a lot of miscommunication or misconceptions about the cloud, and people thinking that if it's not on their site, then somehow everybody else can get to it, or it's not as secure. And if you think about all the companies, I know so many companies, about 15% of the companies in recent poll that we took, they got hit, with some sort of ransomware or got data lost, just because of having on-prem data. And I don't know any person who had any problems that had their data in the cloud. So I mean, that speaks volumes. 15% is like, oh, okay, I'll take my chances. 0% anybody who had their data in the cloud. 15% of the people in my architectural engineering group got affected by it. I mean, that's a pretty substantial difference. So I mean, the cloud has really proven itself to be, is it bulletproof? It's maybe not 100% bulletproof, but I haven't heard anybody who's put their data in the cloud had any problems with it. And it's that trust factor. Maybe years ago there was, should I do it, should I not? But I mean, those days are gone. So when the people are thinking, I think I feel like my data on-prem is still more secure than in the cloud, that ship has sailed. I mean, that just doesn't even exist anymore, because the encryption that you get, the amount of protections that you get are just remarkable. And I know a company who bought into Panzera, and they decided not to put all their data in the cloud. They took some of their data and they put it on the Panzera controllers, and they took their other data and they kept it on-prem storage. Well, they got hit with ransomware, and guess what happened? Everything they had in Panzera, 100%, no problems, nothing happened. Their other data got corrupt, and they're still dealing with that mess. So I mean, if there's a good use case, that's definitely it. The cloud is really the place to be in those days of thinking that your on-prem data is safer. They're long gone.
Andy, if you keep selling us so good, I'm going to lose my job. So I'm only teasing. No, I'm glad you went into the ransomware, because that was a big question that I wanted to ask. You're seeing more and more news articles about ransomware attacks, and it's becoming very prevalent. And I think that you hit a very key and important point to understand, is that with something like a Panzera in the cloud, your data is immutable, meaning it can't be corrupted. The way that you snapshot, you have the latest version of the file, cached, already on the environment. So you can always revert back to, whatever the previous environment was. And chances are it was really recent that snapshot was taken. Let me shift a little bit gears, right? We went into security, which is very important. But I want to kind of shift the focus back to the user experience. What changes, kind of, if any, did you notice, culturally, after making a digital shift into the cloud? And by culturally, I'm talking about attracting talent, right? Employee retention, just general morale.
Yeah, I think when we first moved into it, it was hard for some people, but now it just looks like a local drive. They don't see any real difference. But I think once everybody went home, that changed everything. So when they're in the office, having your local file server, Panzer, really isn't much of a change. But once people moved home and they saw what we could do when you were working from home, I mean, that really changed everything. And we had maybe I don't know, 8-10% of our population already working from home. But when everybody else kind of got forced to work from home, and a lot of those people never worked from home ever in their life. I mean, then they really saw the power of having the data in the cloud and having all these resources. So when they went home, they didn't lose any of that. Everything was really the same. The productivity didn't go down because now it took 10 minutes to download a file to work on it. It took seconds to work on a file just like they were in the office. So we went from at a time 38 offices to over 900 offices in 2 days' time. We didn't skip a beat. I mean, everybody went home. We're like, take all your stuff, go home, and then Monday morning you're going to log in and it's all going to be the same. And everybody's like, no, we're going to be sitting on the couch watching Netflix until IT figures out what we should be doing, and I'll get some time to think about getting back to work. No, Monday morning at 8 o'clock, 2 days after we sent everybody home, everybody was working and everybody was productive. And our productivity actually during COVID went up. We had the highest level of productivity ever. I think a little bit of that, attributed to the fact that there wasn't really a lot of anything else you could do. Everybody was kind of locked up in their homes.
Right.
So a lot of people just did work. So our productivity went up quite a bit, but we had the tools in place so the productivity could go up. We didn't skip a beat. It didn't take us, weeks to figure out how we should handle this and make it better. We had it figured out right away. And the company morale, I think, was very high. Obviously, that we didn't have to take pay cuts, and every single person in our company, I believe, got a pay increase, and everybody got a bonus last year too. And a lot of companies couldn't, they just couldn't say that, and that's what happened. And we continue to enjoy that success. We're starting to move people back into offices now, but people aren't afraid to go home and work from home anymore. It used to be kind of frowned upon working from home, but now if you need to go and work home, you can do it, and you know that you're not going to lose that productivity, or you're going to be 15% less effective working from home. You're going to be the same amount of effectiveness working anywhere that you are in the office.
That's amazing. There's a quote that's internally, kind of attributed to you that some of our sales folks use anecdotally, which is whenever they shut everything down during the pandemic, I didn't lose an ounce of sleep. When I had to send my employees home, and I don't know that there are very many folks in the industry that can say the same.
I said, sorry to interrupt, but I said, I have a long career. 31 years I've worked for Mead Hunt, and it's been a long career. And really, the two best weeks of my entire career were probably the second and third week of March last year. And most people, say that was the biggest nightmare that they ever had to deal with. And we just flipped a switch. We had planned for this, not to this scale. We didn't have pandemic. That was number 5 on my disaster list, but it was there. And we just got to use all the tools in the toolbox. And that's the reason why you do what you do in IT. You got to be prepared. You got to have all those tools available. So when it happens, whatever it is, you have to be able to unleash that box and just make it happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I wanted just to the audience, we have about 10 minutes left. Go ahead. There's a questions panel where you guys can type in and ask whatever you'd like to, and I'll be happy to relay those to Andy as we wrap up. Moving away from sort of the user experience, what competitive advantage, whenever you think about the business value of increased productivity brought on by being digitally transformed, what were some of those things? What are some of those maybe quantifiable things that you can speak to, if those exist, and if there aren't necessarily quantifiable off the top of the head, just kind of broadly, what are those things?
Well, I mean, once you move everything, to the cloud and you get all your data in one spot, there's a lot less maintenance. There's a lot less you have to do on backups. I mean, users restore their own files. We don't have a lot of overhead that we're dealing with anymore. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ROIs that you can attribute there, but the IT department, we've kept the same number of people in IT, and we've grown quite a bit. So I think I have the same amount of people working for me today as it did a couple of years ago when we had half as many people. So, there's a lot of advantages that you're getting on top of everything else. When I first did this, I didn't see the benefit of the security because 9 years ago there wasn't all these attacks. It just wasn't a prevalent thing like it is today. So yeah, that was a kind of a deal back then, but really I was trying to fix that file lock sync. But now I would buy Panzera today just for the security. What we get for the security, I think that's value enough. And you think when you get a ransomware attack and the average attack on an office is going to cost between $1 million and $2 million, it's pretty easy to see that ROI in Panzera when you think about that. And I don't think there's a lot of companies that can say that they've never had a attack on their system, and Panzera can raise that flag and say, that's us. So I think it's pretty easy to see that, and I think there's a lot of people second guessing their decisions not to put the system in place, especially when they got hit. And especially with security, it's not if you're going to get hit, it's when you're going to hit. Everybody has to know that everybody is vulnerable. I mean, every big company, I mean, they've all been hit. So it's not if I'm going to be hit, it's when you're going to get hit, and then how prepared are you to handle that experience or what's going to happen to you. And it's numbing to the soul when you think about what you turn on your system someday and somebody's ransomed your entire company. And like I said, I sleep better knowing that we have Panzera in place.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not if, it's when. You sound like a military expert, right? You got to look out for all the threat points. Got a question rolling in. How did you decide which workloads to migrate to the cloud and when? And I think when it says when, in which order?
So we moved 100% of our data to the cloud. We made a decision that every piece of data we had was going to go up to the cloud, and it took a while because we had so many offices. But like we put a new controller in every weekend. Every weekend we had to parse data and we moved it up. But every single piece of data that we own is in Panzera. So, I mean, it was a pretty easy decision to put it all up there. I mean, we have all of our data going back as long as I've been there. I mean, when I started, all we had was floppy drives and we had no servers. Every piece of data we have is controlled by Panzera, and it's all in the cloud. And that's what everybody knows. We don't have any other systems than Panzera that we use for all of our data.
Wow. All right, so that's it. Unless anybody has questions to ask, I think I don't know what it looks like on the panel view, but you should be able to type in a question and I can answer it, and I'll give that just a minute. But Andy, is there anything else that you think is important that we might have missed, or kind of a closing statement that you'd want to make before we finish up here?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different solutions out there, and everybody's trying to sell, they're better than the next guy or we're cheaper than the next guy. And I know a lot of companies that are cheaper than Panzera, but it really is, you get what you pay for. I know people that have some of these other solutions that are competitors of Panzera, and I mean, it really is true. When you say you get what you pay for. You buy a Yugo, you're not getting a Cadillac. I mean, that's yeah, it still drives around like a car, but what kind of experience are you having with it? And I think that's the telling sign is what you're really going to get. You get the whole package with Panzera. If you're looking for the cheapest thing on the market, yeah, this maybe isn't the cheapest thing on the market, but it really is the best. And people that do other solutions, they kind of regret that they don't go to Panzera. And there's other competitors of them. And I've talked to other people who went down a different road, and then they come back to Panzera. And it definitely was one of the best decisions I ever made, for our company, and the dividends it paid. I mean, it's more than paid for itself over and over with what we've been able to do with it. And the future just looks bright. I mean, Panzera moves with, with technology. You can move up to Azure. We have Panzera in 3 different Azure sites around the U.S. So depending whatever your environment looks like, you're going to be able to use it. If you're international, it's really easy to add internationally. You can put it anywhere. There's 56 Azure sites around the globe. So pretty much anywhere that you're at, you got an office in China or India or wherever it may be, you're going to get that constant speed, and then you're never going to have that mothership terminology used. We don't have that. Everybody's the same. If you're at home, if you're in an office of 5 people, 25 people, or in an office of 200 people, everybody gets that same experience. So we hire the best people. We always say that we hire the best people. Doesn't matter where you're at. If you can contribute to the company, if you believe in what Mead Hunt is, you're going to be successful. We're going to give you the tools to make you successful. And I think that's really helped our company to grow, because that's what we do. We give you that experience, and if people leave our company and they go someplace else, and I mean, it happens. They're like, man, we didn't know what we had, until we left. And, the systems in place that some other companies aren't really the same. So if you want to have that rich experience, definitely give Panzera a try. And you guys make it easy. You can get servers set up, and you can do trials on it really very quickly. And you just have to try it. And once you try it, you're going to be hooked. And then it's get the PO and get it going.
Andy, thank you so much for joining us today. You're so well thought of in the community, and obviously very forward thinking. I appreciate your time and taking the time to answer the questions and being so complimentary. We're looking forward to seeing Mead Hunt take off into that top 10 and then the #1 spot eventually, and help and support you guys on that journey. Thank you everyone who joined. We will be sending out a recording, and if you have any questions, as always, feel free to go to our website and send us an email. Love to talk to you. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks a lot, Andy.
Thanks, Andrew.